Welcome to the Video Creators Podcast. We help YouTube creators grow their audience and business with next-level tactics and strategies. Want to accelerate your channel's momentum, be more profitable, and change the lives of more people than ever before? You're in the right place. The Video Creators team has over a decade of experience providing YouTube strategy for brands like Disney, Warner Brothers, HBO, and even YouTube themselves. So far, our team is responsible for helping clients generate over 17 billion views on YouTube. And now, to help you, here's Tim, Lennon, and Delana.
Hello, creators. How are you guys? It's great to hang out with you again for another Video Creators Podcast like we do here every Monday on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, on YouTube, on wherever you listen to your podcast, basically. We love hanging out with you here every week just to go deeper into some of these topics that you just can't really do justice to in like a 3.5 to 6 minute video on YouTube. Here, we want to go deep. We want to grow our businesses. We want to grow our YouTube channels. We want to take them to the next level. If we are at 6 figures in revenue and maybe in subscribers on our channel, we want to get to 7 figures. How do we get to $1 million a year in revenue? How do we get to 1 million subscribers on our YouTube channel, serving people and helping them along the way with the businesses that we're growing? That's what we get really excited about here, is reaching people, changing more lives. And today I want to introduce you to the wife of a former client of ours who I think is going to really, well, I know because I already did the interview. She is really going, oh my gosh, it was so good for me to hear some of the things that she had to say. So convicting and encouraging and motivating all at the same time. So basically, here's the context before we jump into this interview with Janae Thompson. Whose husband is Grant Thompson, the original founder and creator behind the channel, The King of Random. Today it has over 13 million subscribers on YouTube and is a very successful channel and one of the biggest ones out there. But this channel almost shut down, and Grant's story is maybe similar to a lot of ours, which is why we're talking about this here today. I remember distinctly, I didn't know who he was. He had around 6 million subscribers at the time. He comes up to me and he's like, Tim, you are either going to help me scale this channel and grow it, or I'm going to quit YouTube. And I'm like, whoa. Okay. Like, what's going on here? We were at this event out in Utah and this YouTube event, we were both there, and he introduced himself to me. And I wasn't so interested in like trying to make sure that he didn't quit YouTube. It was more of like, this guy's frustrated. He's feeling things. How can we help him serve people to the way he wanted to? He's like, Tim, I'm working 60, 80 hours a week on this thing, and it's successful. It's making good money. But I just can't sustain this. I can't keep it up. It's like, either you're going to help me do this or I'm going to quit. And so we took him on as a client. I don't want to give too many spoiler alerts because we're going to talk with his wife about some of these things here. But that is the place where I am coming from with this episode. And not me personally necessarily, but from like I have totally been there though. Like that place where I remember it very distinctly back in the beginning days of Video Creators. I've been an active creator on several different other people's channels, my own channel and places and things before starting Video Creators. And I remember after I lost my job and I was starting Video Creators, I told my wife, like, yeah, I'm going to go do this thing. I'm going to go do for myself what I've been teaching other people to do now. And other people are like, hey, Tim, is someone going to tell this guy that like he can't make a living to support his family on YouTube? Like, what's he doing? And that was back in 2013 even. So things have certainly changed a lot since then. But I remember that feeling of like, I've got a plate spinning on every finger. I've got a ball spinning on every toe, and I can't afford to let any of them drop, because if I do, that's going to be a loss of income for me. And I'm just kind of barely hanging on to this thing and like making it work as it is. So how do you get to that next place? How do you start growing the business and scaling it beyond yourself so that you can have the time that you need, you can have the life that you need, and you can still have the income and the revenue that you need while also being passionate about the thing that you're passionate about? It's, a lot of people call it the work-life balance. I don't know if that's a thing. I feel like it's more like prioritizing and just doing whatever you can, and whatever falls below the red line, it's just a thing that doesn't happen, right? And so that's kind of how I look at it anyway. I don't think the work-life balance is like a attainable thing. So I remember working with Grant, and a spoiler, he achieved it. He did it. And unfortunately then in 2019, he passed away due to an accident and left the channel to his wife, and left behind 4 kids. And the channel continued to grow without him. The people who are running it with him on his team continued to grow it. And when I started working with him, it had 6 million subscribers. Today it has over 13 million. So it's still more than doubled. And what I want to talk with her about is get a little behind the scenes look at, like, how do you actually grow a successful YouTube business with literally 13 million subscribers that scales beyond yourself, to the point where the creator unfortunately passes away in a tragic accident, and the channel still continues to grow because of the way he set that channel up and that business up. And we're going to get into a lot of that here today. We're going to have the interview here with Janae, and then I'm going to be back at the end to share a couple of final thoughts about like what really hit me and what some of my next steps are as a result of this conversation with Janae. I've already gone and talked to my wife about it. It was, I don't know, it was just good. It was good for me to hear, and I hope it is for you. If you are the type of person who feels like you're stuck, you feel like you're grinding, you're doing the 9 to 5, but you're also doing the channel, or maybe you're full-time on YouTube, whatever it is, you're just like, I don't know how to get to that next level. I don't know how to just like how to create more sustainable creativity that just continues to perform better and better. Like, I don't know how to do that. If that's you, you're feeling that struggle, how do you get to the next level? This is the conversation that's going to step you down that right path. So let's jump into this conversation with Janae. Thank you so much for hanging out with me here, Janae. I'm really excited to talk with you about this topic. I remember meeting Grant back in, I think it was 2016. He had a couple million subscribers, and he's like, Tim, my gosh, like, this is my paraphrase, of course. He's like, how am I going to keep doing this? He's like, I'm burned out doing like 68 hours to 80 hours per week on my YouTube channel. And I remember his exact words from me, Tim, you're going to help me fix this, or I'm going to quit YouTube. What do you remember about that time? What can you tell me about that? What was that season of life like for you guys?
Yeah, so we were just coming out of this passion project that had become life. And when I say passion project, it's like this drive to create and share these experiments that we were doing. Anything that Grant saw he wanted to delve into would become a video. And so life wasn't just, we're living our lives. It's like, we can make a video out of that. Oh, this is a great video. Oh, this has got to be a video. And then it's, okay, here's all of the things that is going to be encompassed or are going to be encompassed in creating that. And now we're working 18-hour days, 24/7, basically, to get these videos produced at the quality that we would, feel is worthy of the internet, and that correctly portrays what we're discovering and what we're creating. And it just became this lifestyle, really, of video creation. Anything that was happening in life had a connection to becoming a video. So it wasn't like we're living life now, we're making videos and that's our life.
I feel like that's kind of normal for a lot of creators when they first get started. And I don't know, like if you, because I don't think Grant was like just getting started necessarily. You've been doing it for a little while, but like it becomes this all-consuming thing. And in the beginning is like, it's passion, it's excitement, it's like energy. And you're so, like, is it going to be amazing? Right. And then it does. Do you feel like creators just tend to let that take over their life in that way?
I think so. I think people who tend to live passionately don't do anything half-assed at all. Yeah. And so it does start with passion, but then it becomes precision because there's a pattern that passion follows when it becomes successful.
And when you get passionate about something, it seems to me that perfectionism comes along with that sometimes for some people, where it's like, no, it has to be done this way, this time. Like, and I remember that's one of the things I felt like I talked about with Grant, and he felt was holding him back, was just like, no one else can edit like I can. Like, I've tried hiring people that just can't do it. And it wasn't just the editing. It was like having someone else on camera. It was someone else to manage the brand deals. It was like all the other things. And he's like, no one else can do it like I can. And I know that's a common feeling that prevents creators sometimes from like letting go, and and the passion, the perfectionism, it all starts consuming their life. What type of impact, though, from what you've seen, did that have on Grant and you, your family, the business?
So, I mean, that is where that burnout comes from, is when you're not able to let go and let people come in and help you because there's a certain level that you want your work to be at because you're passionate.
Yeah.
And then not allowing yourself to like have it be done versus be perfect. And so like it really affected us because he was a very passionate and perfectionism type person. And it was a real challenge and a real struggle for him during the whole creation process, even when we brought people in, until he got to the point where it was like, okay, I'm not going to do it. He had to let go to the point where it was like, I won't even do it at all.
Yeah.
And then he could let somebody else come in. But that's really an extreme mentality to be able to let go, is that I won't even do it at all. So now I don't care at all about it versus, how can I have a balance of allowing things to be less than perfect, but they're done, and allowing people with truly good skills who have a lot of talent to come in and bring their different perspective. Because the reality is that no one creator actually can do everything perfect. And not only that, but no one creator can do the very best work that they're capable of without being open to having other creators, like whether they're a creator in the videography space or they're a creator in the editing space. Maybe they're not a YouTube creator per se, but they're a creator in their own expertise, and allowing that to become a synergistic work partnership versus I'm only going to do things in this direction. This is the way I see perfect. And then it's really handicapping, actually. And
Totally.
I think there were elements of what Grant did that could have been much better, much sooner if he could have had more balance in allowing and letting go. And it would have prevented a lot of that burnout too. And, as the supportive wife, I'm telling him these things and he's like, I know you're right. And I just can't do it. And I'm like, okay, well, if you're going to be in that mindset, I'm obviously not going to force you, but I'm going to be here supporting and encouraging you down that path until you're ready.
Well, I'm glad you heard that. I know you're right, but what I heard was that no, Tim, like it doesn't work that way. And it was like, I was telling you, Grant, like you need to let go. And I remember this myself because I had the exact same problem when I was like, well, no one else can edit. Like that was the hardest thing, because that's like a creative expression. How do you train someone else to be the creative the same way you are? And so what I did is when I hired my first editor, I was like, here's how I do it. And we went back and forth a lot, screen capturing myself, editing. Here's why I'm cutting here and not here, and basically turning into this process. And no video he did was like right. But this was kind of where I saw myself in Grant when I was working with him, is like, it might not be exactly what I would have edited, but no one on the internet is going to notice the difference between what that other person had. It was like, this person got to like 80, 85% of like what I would have done. And no one notices the other 10 to 15%.
Right. Yeah. And it's that 15% that can handicap you and hold you back from your growth. Yeah. If it's about your perfection, then sure, you know, put another, 100% of hours into that 15%. And you're just cutting yourself off as far as your ability to progress.
That's right. Like the only one who knew about that other 10 to 15% was Grant, or it was me in my video. No one else would be able to tell. Yeah.
Right. And so to your credit, Tim, at that time when you were telling him this, I'm telling him this too. It's great to have a reinforcement from the outside that's not just my wife, Yeah.
Well, it helps when you pay someone too. Right.
Right. And when you pay someone, so you have a vested interest in their opinion.
Right. Exactly.
But also oh, you know what? I've heard this before. Maybe there's additional credibility going back and forth on everybody that he's consulting with, me,
Right.
somebody like you, other creators as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember meeting with him. And I remember this meeting. I still remember being in my office, remember the whole thing. And we walked through this plan I put together for him that was going to help him start scaling the business with better systems and checklists and processes. And he kind of seemed to like raise an eyebrow. He's like, with this help, and I understand kind of the skepticism because because it sounds on the surface like what we're saying is you just need to hire people to help. And he's like, I've tried that with bad results. I'm like, yes, that's not what we're saying here. You need to hire people to help, but you also have to set them up to succeed and give them the right processes and the right assignments to like, here's how so I mentioned like with my editor, it was me screen capturing myself editing. And here's why I'm cutting here and not here. Here's why I'm choosing this music and not this music. And I remember I assigned him this book called E-Myth, why most small businesses don't work. And I think he had a huge light bulb moment. He said he read that book 3 times. What do you remember about what was going on for Grant and the business when he was trying to start systematizing the different elements of his business? What was that changing in him in the business?
Well, it was a lot of trial and error because as a creative, a lot of times I find creators don't have the logistical business mindset in the background to be able to run like an operating system for their creative to go out and expand and grow and be successful. They're solely creators that are artistic and talented, and Grant had kind of both elements, really. He had a lot of business experience as well. I think for him, it was trying to bring the two together because he didn't realize his creativity and his artistic side until he started doing it. And then it kind of became overwhelming to him. And so, when he read that book 3 times, it was like taking him back to his business training. But also I know that at that time when he was working with you and you're saying he's raising an eyebrow to what you're telling him. I didn't experience that from my end as he is telling me about, oh, I'm doing this with Tim and this is what's happening. He came out with pages. I mean, I'm talking 20, 30, 40, maybe even up to over 100 pages worth of checklist items for each of the job positions that we were hiring for. And that made a huge difference for him in allowing him to not only just get it out of his brain so it's not so overwhelming for him, but then feel like, okay, it's out of here and it's over here. And I can now let go and trust more because what's here has come into this outside existence.
Yeah. It's like that detail-oriented part of his personality was the thing that was holding him back because no one else knew the details. But then once he's like, oh, wait, here's how I communicate the details in a way that people, I remember, I bumped into him. We went through this experience with him and then we kind of parted ways for a while. And I bumped into him about a year or so later at Social Media Marketing World. And his whole demeanor was different. Like I remember he comes up, he's so excited. He pulls out his phone. I still remember it as an Android phone. And he pulls it out. And he's like, I have this written checklist now for how someone can edit one of my videos, Tim. And he's like, it's at the point that if anyone who knows the mechanics of video editing, I can give them my raw footage and this checklist. And if they follow the checklist, they give me back a video that's at 100% every single time. And I was like, oh my gosh. And you're right. It was 81 pages long just for this one checklist. And he told me that as like a former airline pilot, like these SOPs, standard operating procedures, started making more sense to him because he had to go through checklists all the time before they took off, before they landed, and before the aircraft door could open and everything. So what did it look like for Grant? Like when he began systematizing different parts of his business in such detail, do you remember how he went about doing that? And like what that looked like for him to actually take it from out of his head and into a checklist?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think for everybody, really, what you have to do is go through the process yourself and document it as you're going through the process. And I know that's what he did. So as each element of whatever job position we wanted to create or hone into as far as like, what are the things, he just went through that job step by step and wrote it down. And he wrote it down in detail. It's not like, okay, I'm editing now. It's okay, I'm using this tool to do this, to create this effect. And, like it was very, very detailed.
Yeah, I think that's the part that people like me, I wouldn't consider myself a detail-oriented person, although other people on my team tell me I am. But I'm always comparing myself to the person who's like super detail-oriented, right? And I'm not that person.
And just remember, comparison is the killer of joy because you can compare both ways and you'll get fast perspective.
Yeah,
So,
that's totally, and that's exactly what I do to myself. So yeah, you're right. And so I think about trying to like make, this is me just like rubbing my face, like, no, like creating a checklist. I just want to be creative. I just want to like do what I love. I want to throw it up against the wall and see what sticks, and the idea of trying to systematize creativity feels like it's killing creativity. But on the other hand, like, I do think creativity can be systematized. It can be put into a process in a way that allows you to be more creative, more predictably every single one, rather than just leaving it up to like this elusive like thing in the air. Like, how do I make sure I'm creative again and again and again? Like, you can systematize and probably should systematize even your creativity. And that's, I feel like, what he started doing with some of those things.
Grant's process in what you're just describing right here, where it's like, I just want to be creative. And so it seems easier to just go ahead and create because you're going through the process in your head and you know it down pat. So it's much faster than stopping and writing it down and giving it to somebody else and training it. It's much, much faster. And it always will be until you write it down, train somebody else, and then they do it. And then all of a sudden you've just opened up your whole entire world to freedom you couldn't even fathom before you did that. But again, it's going back to, I'm going to hold myself back because I do it faster. And it would take me 10 times as long to go through this process and train somebody. And I'm not willing to make that time investment because in my head and in my process, I do it so much faster. But then that's where you hold yourself back.
Totally. Yeah, exactly. I'm even thinking like from a parenting perspective. Yeah. It's like, this is my wife and I talking about this. So kind of off topic parenthetically here, but kind of not, where it's like, we can keep cooking the meals and washing the dishes, or we can take extra time to teach our kids how to do this. And then that frees up a lot more time going forward. So it's like a temporary pain that we get over. And then from there, it's like a lot more freedom after that.
Right. And it's an investment mindset to be able to do that. I mean, just to the credit of that example, I had COVID a week and a half ago and I felt great. Like I didn't feel bad, but I was like, well,
that's good.
I took all my boys and I said, we're going to learn how to clean bathrooms. And we cleaned 6 bathrooms in our house. That's too many bathrooms, I know, but I said,
we have 7, so we got you.
Okay. Thank goodness. Yeah. I would love to have less, but I made a checklist. I said, here's all the items on the checklist. Now let's go through each item and we're going to do it together. So you know what I expect. And after my boys cleaned 4 bathrooms, I set them on the last bathroom on their own. And I said, okay, you guys go do it. And you know what? My bathrooms have now been clean for a week and a half. You know why?
Oh my goodness.
Because my kids know what it now takes to clean the bathroom. So they're now cleaning them after themselves. And I'm not nagging at all anymore.
Oh,
and
interesting.
Like, you know what? That took a whole day. We didn't do anything else that entire day. And in my mindset, I'm like, I don't have a whole day to clean bathrooms. It's faster if I just take 2 hours and clean all the bathrooms myself.
I know, exactly.
That the rest of my life. And then my kids come in and annihilate all the cleaning I've done. And then I'm resentful and, then I'm cleaning more. No, but so that 24-hour investment and really, 8 hours is already paying off in huge dividends in family peace. The bathrooms are cleaner. They're spraying the toilet, or now they're aiming better. So they're not spraying the toilet. I mean, it's all these little things that they build on each other, and they're not perfect now, but it's that investment in yourself to create the time that you really, really want. So it's about kind of prioritizing, what do I want with my time and how do I want to create it?
Yeah, I think for people who are listening, sometimes it sounds like, okay, well, I get systematizing cleaning a bathroom, or in case like we have Airbnb and our kids follow a checklist for cleaning the Airbnb before we flip it for the next guest and things too.
Sure.
But when it comes to doing that to creativity, what I have found is a much bigger challenge, but it's like, how do I systematize a decision-making process in terms of like, should I cut here? Leave this in, take that out. How do I respond to this email? Like for my personal assistant, for example, Caitlin, like how do I set her up with a process that lets her not just know, always say this, and that, but there's nuances to every email that comes in. So how do I give her a system that lets her make the right decision about what the response should be, rather than just here's what it is every time? And
do you have an answer to that?
I do actually. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, the short version is it comes down to people, hiring people who embody your core values.
Okay.
And I don't mean like agree with your core values or think that they're good, but they actually like live and embody these same values. And once that, because you can teach people processes, but you can't really teach people how to embody values. And so if they have, once I had to identify what are the core values that I filter my decisions through, then I find people who embody those core values as well. And then teaching them and setting them up for success in terms of how to respond becomes a lot easier because we have, it's not the same thinking process. It's just, you know, or similar personalities. Just like we both are, for example, one of them is people first. So it doesn't, and I don't mean like people agree with that. It's just like, again, embody that. Like this is all about people. So yeah.
Right.
So
that's a great answer. And, you know, as you're kind of asking this question, I don't know if it was rhetorical or like, here's an answer, but I was kind of thinking along the similar lines. It's like, okay, you as a person and you as a business owner, what is the experience that you want somebody that you're interacting with to have at the end of your interaction, which is a priority? And can you teach a priority? Yes, you can. So then if you go back and kind of figure out what decisions am I making to interact with this person, and then you can go and teach that process to someone that's like a personal assistant, and then you can systematize creating that outcome because you know at the end, how do I want this person to experience me and my company? And it's like you just said, one of your values, like people first.
Yeah.
So how do you address concerns and how do you communicate in a way that someone has the outcome of the feeling of, wow, Tim and his company, I feel put first when I interact with them.
Exactly. Yeah. And there are some things that are more task related in terms of those processes. For example, like if we get an email from someone, you're not quite sure, like, does this person know Tim? Does someone like just search my archive of all my email and read all prior conversations I've had with that person. And then you can then be better positioned to make a judgment call of like, this person's pretending like they know Tim, but I don't think they actually do. So I'm going to handle this one as opposed to assigning it to him or something like that. But
Okay. Yeah.
So I remember about a year later after he shows me this SOP, Grant, for his editing process, he's so excited. He's like, it's 81 pages long. I'm like, oh my goodness.
He would always take things to an extreme. So you say, make a checklist, he'll make 81 pages.
Yes. Well, and I was like, how can anyone follow a checklist that long? And so he was like, well, it's actually like, I forget how many, but 7 main points, but then there's like sub lists and sub lists. And they just kind of, if they don't know how to do anything, they'll have to go through the whole thing. But if someone can just read like this one check box and know what that means, then they can skip the next 6 points, for example. And I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense.
Speak to that. When he gave that 81 page checklist to some of our employees, they were like,
yeah, you probably need to prep them for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I remember we're like shooting a video interview together, setting up a camera, and we're just talking. And he's like, thank you for, the process you went through. He says now, and this is how I remember it. So I don't know. You can correct me please, if I'm wrong. But what I remember is he said something to the effect of, I'm only working about 5 hours a week now in the business. He's like, I have other people editing. I have other people managing the brand deals. I even have other hosts showing up on the channel because he's like, I learned to systematize everything. And he's like, and my new project now is I'm learning to systematize things in my home. I'm like, okay, maybe and I'm now being like, okay, yes, we can systematize some things at our home. Before I was like, I don't know. But tell me about that season of like how was life different for Grant, for you, the family and the business as a result of him being able to create processes that allowed him to step away from the business and start handing it off to other people?
Yeah. So I think it gave him a lot more personal freedom to feel like he could pursue passions that he wanted. So, he took up the paragliding because of that, which is ultimately what led to his death. And, that's not like, oh, this led to his death. But for him to have the space to say, what do I want to do was really freeing for him. And, it's interesting because you have to also be very careful in the freedoms that you allow yourself. And there is an element of working hard and working a lot that allows a person to become really focused and dedicated to what they're doing. And when they don't have that, it's easier to get off track in life. And so you know, I see that effect as well, because ultimately, you know, like he had all this freedom, but for him, I think because he wasn't able to balance things in a way that created not so much extreme, he threw himself into the next thing. And to his own detriment, it was not healthy for him. You know, this is just a byproduct of how he did things. This isn't a byproduct of the process. This is more of just like a warning for somebody who, you know, is a passionate person, like creating balance when you've met your objective, and, you know, asking yourself, am I finding joy in the journey, or am I just trying to get to an objective? Because if you're just trying to get to the objective and you're, you know, again, like you have the blinders on, and he'd always say that, you know, I got the blinders on right now. I can't do this. I can't do that. And that's where like it did affect the family, because he's like, well, I have to do this way. And, you know, I don't have anybody else that can do it. And so I've got the blinders on. And then that's where the process comes in, and he can kind of take the blinders off and go to the next thing. And it's freeing, and it's great, and it's amazing. But without an element of balance, even within that process, anything can be extreme.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
We just had this conversation internally with the team, with my team last week. And I'm not saying this is true about Grant, because I don't know, but I have seen a pattern where people come to us and they say, you know, I just want to create financial freedom. I want to create financial independence. I want to do something I'm passionate about and I love. I want to grow a business around my audience on YouTube and pour myself into my creativity. And so that I can spend more time with my family, because I'm currently working this other job. And I asked my team, we wrestled through this question, because we just did a survey of our audience this past earlier in the beginning of the month of January. We could do every year. And it was 49.1% of people said that they were doing this to be able to get more time. And ultimately they said more time with their family. And my question was like, is that true? Like, will they actually spend more time with their family if we could free it? Or is it like, this is a personality type thing, and like, it sounds noble, but would they actually be like, I really want to go do something else, you know?
Right. And I can answer this really passionately because it's really personal to me, in that, you know, if they're not already doing it, they're a liar. Because someone who truly values their family will already be doing the things that it takes to create priority for that family, whether it's giving 5 minutes, but it's focused and it's prioritized, or 24 hours in a day. You know, so when someone says, I want to spend more time with their family, I would say, what does that mean? What are you spending your time doing now? And what are you actually already doing with your family? Because, you know, Grant said that, and then he had more freedom. And what did he do? He went off and learned paragliding, and he spent, you know, 18 hours a day doing that. And so did we actually see more of him? Yeah, occasionally we did. But his priority was, again, like creating an experience for himself. And he had a family, and he knew it was important, and he wanted to spend time with them, but he still hadn't made the mind shift of being able to do that in a healthy, balanced way. And so you know, when somebody says that, I would look at what are they already doing right now? And I would look at myself, you know, and I would invite anybody that you're training to look at themselves and say, what are you doing now? And how can you make that your priority right now? Because when you have more time freedom, what is really going to happen is you're just going to expand more and become more of what you already are, whether it's in creation of YouTube videos, whether it's in business, whether it's in family. What you're already doing now will just be replaced by whatever it is that you take up.
That's so good. That hit me. I'm glad you said it the way you did. Like, you're a liar.
And I'll call you out, because, you know, it's pertinent. I mean, in my experience of this process, I lost my husband to what he chose next because he was a liar, you know, and I'm not saying that he was a bad person. I'm not saying he lied, but he was lying to himself. And anytime you're lying to yourself, you will be directed down a path that is dishonest. And, you know, like in our case, he paid for it with his life. He paid for his dishonesty with his life, and it's affected me greatly.
Yeah. I think that's just really important. Yeah. So I think that is so good. It's like, if you want to spend more time with your family, don't wait for a YouTube channel to get, because it's going to consume more for you. Don't wait for the 9 to 5 to go away. Don't wait for like the, whatever the thing is, like do it now. Like,
Yeah.
right.
And in this life, the reality is we don't know how much time we have in life. Today could be my last breath, whether I'm a paraglider or I get in a car accident, or I could just die in my sleep. We don't know when our time is over. And when it's over, it's done. And so if you're saying, well, I'll do this later when I have this and this, what you're saying is I'm not willing to pay the price to have what I want right now.
It's true.
Because anything that you want right now, you can have. You don't have to have a successful YouTube channel. You don't have to have more time. You don't have to have more money. It's about knowing yourself and knowing your priorities.
Yeah, that's really, really good.
And just like you're saying, can I train an assistant? Yeah, you can if you know your priorities.
Yeah.
And if you don't, you'll never be able to train somebody to do what you want to do because you don't have yourself directed in a balanced way with your priorities at the core.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this is kind of where Grant's story starts to get a little fuzzy for me because unfortunately he passed away in 2019, left behind you, 4 boys, and the YouTube business. And I don't really know like what happened to the business after that. Like today, the channel has almost 13 million subscribers. There's new hosts on it. The channel looks like it's still growing. And most YouTube channels would just stop once the creator is no longer actively involved. We've seen that. I don't think I've seen any channels really, other than maybe Grant's, where it continued to go after the original creator was no longer involved. But that's not what happened for the King of Random. So did the systems Grant set up, did they continue to grow the business even without him and continue to provide for you and the kids? Or is that, and I know it's kind of a sensitive question, but I'm just kind of wondering, did the systems he set up eventually continue to produce fruit and provide for you guys even after?
Yeah. So the short answer to that is yeah, absolutely. Like those systems were set up to work on their own. And they weren't set up, unfortunately, to be a long-term solution, but they were set up to be a short-term solution that worked in the short term. So, this is where it was such a blessing to have those systems set up because it's allowed for time to continue to support what we created in the beginning and figure out how to take the next steps, which I'm still in the process of figuring out. Has it gone in this upward trajectory of like continuing to grow, continuing to be the content that was originally produced on the channel? No, it's changed and it's morphed. And I think that's indicative of business, no matter what happens.
Sure.
And so it's not just that, the original creator died, but it's that like, can this business weather the process of time? And that's where, when you're setting up systems and creating something, having a long-term vision is vital. Yeah. And, again, you don't know when your time is going to be over in this life. And so the question I would ask a creator is, when you're looking for a solution, what time frame do you have in mind? Is it like, oh, I just want to have a week that looks like this, then you're thinking in terms of like 1 week time frames. But if you're saying, 10 years from now, here's what I want my life to look like. Here's how I want my business to run. Here's who I want in charge. Here's how I want them to do that. And here's what the overall business will look like. Your results are going to be vastly different if you're asking yourself the question, I want my week to look like this, or I want my next decade to look like this. Yeah. And so there have been a myriad of problems that have come up that we're still trying to figure out. But at the same time, like having that basis, I mean, you do have to set up your week first. But if you stop there and then you don't have the big perspective, then you're setting yourself up for more failure in the future that's going to take more of your time. And it is a process of trial and error even still. So it's not like that's a bad thing. And you do have to have a starting point, but realizing that what is my perspective and how big is my perception of the questions I'm asking myself for the solutions that I want is life changing.
Yeah. I think about my business. I'm like, I don't know. My wife would do with it after I pass, but I would at least like it to be something that could continue to provide for her if she needed it to and wanted it to. So, yeah. So before I let you go here, I just want to ask, like, give you freedom to say whatever comes to mind here for you, just from the perspective of a creator's wife. What advice would you give to other creators who just feel stuck and they feel overwhelmed with their channel and the business they're trying to grow around it? What would, as that person's spouse, what advice would you just give to people like me and other people who are doing that?
Yeah, well, that's a loaded question.
Yeah. And about 30 seconds or less. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah,
take as much time as you need.
Like the biggest help that came as a result of our partnership as a married couple and in the YouTube creations space is like the freedom to allow for expression. And in that, what I mean is that, Grant was on this path of like finding himself, finding his business, finding his passion, finding answers to these questions that he would ask and then making a video out of it. And, in any marriage that is working well, you guys have space for each other to explore and to be not sure. And I don't know if this is really answering the question. This is just what's coming to mind. Yeah. But like supporting each other fully in your processes. So, like the processes are messy and they're overwhelming and there's a lot to be done. And the more support you can give each other, the more successful all of the outcomes are going to be in life, in business, in creation, in YouTube. And so that's where, again, you have to look inside yourself and say, how willing am I to support this person who's my partner in what they're doing? And if you can say, I will support them in everything that they need to do to find what it is that they need to find without betraying myself and without betraying what's appropriate, like you can't watch your partner self-destruct without saying something, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So there is still a line and a balance in the support, but coming from a place of like, I want you to find what it is you're looking for and supporting that. That's the fastest path to creating systems that work without the person. And again, it's that time sacrifice of sometimes you're gonna have to be away from each other more. But if you know what the priority is and the outcome is, and you know what the steps are, it's a lot easier to make that sacrifice.
My wife and I have had similar conversations. And what we have found is like, we need to put a day on the calendar when you are no longer, like, if you don't get that thing by this date, like, we're done. It's not going to be this ongoing perpetual thing. Like, so for example, in our business might be like, hey, we've got to redo this course, YouTube changed some things. And it's going to be like, I'm just going to be really intensely focused on this, but I will be done on like February 28th or whatever the case might be. Yes. Right. And so so that helps her, my wife, feel like, okay, this isn't like an ongoing thing. Like, I can see that date and he said it's going to be done. And then I have to stay true to my word. Like, yes, it is done. And that those intense seasons don't perpetuate forever. Otherwise, I feel like we as creators, we get stuck and just, okay, we've got this system in place that freed up this time, but now the time just gets sucked up with something else. And that's why I'm like, I don't know if they actually would spend time with their family. Right. And
so here's where I can give Grant some credit. In that, so every week, so what you're saying is like, okay, we have this big push and we're going to go until this date. Like, that's great communication, and that you're setting up an objective. You're creating space for support. There's a beginning, there's an end. That's all great. And during that time, even when it's intensely focused, how are you still prioritizing what you're saying is actually important to you? So Grant and I had a weekly date set up. We went out every Tuesday night, 4 o'clock to 9 o'clock, 5 hours, just me and him. We would go out. We had a routine. We'd go to the park. We'd walk for 2 hours. We'd just talk out everything from the week. And then we'd go get dinner, and then we'd do whatever else in the last couple hours. But we had a recurring babysitter that came every week. At 4 o'clock, I knew I was done with whatever I needed to be done. He would leave work no matter how crazy it was. And Tuesday night was like this sacred night date time. And, you know, even when all of the systems transferred into this newfound freedom, that routine that we had established was one of the only things that survived into the next phase because it was set up, it was a priority, and it was systematized.
Yeah.
You know, and so that's great to have that communication around those big pushes, but at the same time, you've got to have the smaller things in place that you are committed to that really help strengthen the relationships that you have.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Janae, for everything you've shared with us and expressing your vulnerability and letting us in behind the scenes a little bit of your story and Grant's story. I know it's really good for me to hear it. So thank you for sharing that, and wish you guys all the best as you guys move forward with the King of Random.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Tim. I appreciate it.
Man, that was so good. I'm so glad I had the opportunity to sit down with her and talk about the story since Grant's passing. Yeah, the thing that just hits me the most is when she's like, don't wait for the stars to align for you to do what you need to do the thing you want to do. Just freaking do it, you know? And part of me is like, well, yeah, but like, I'll be able to do that once all these other things are lined up. But I also hear what she's saying, which is maybe you could do that thing better when those stars are aligned. But if you really believe that thing, and that is actually a core value and a thing you really want, go after that thing and do it now. Like, don't wait. And I get it, because like on one hand, people are like, well, you know, I want to spend more time with my family, but like the YouTube channel, that's my passion. Or this other topic I do on YouTube is my passion. Or like this business is my passion. This other thing, whatever it is my passion. And I really want to grow this to something so I can spend more time with my family. And like the reason why my team and I have been asking ourselves internally, like we hear that a lot, but do people actually do that? I don't hear a lot of stories of that actually happening. I hear more of the stories of the opposite, which is, whoa, I have more time now. And now I can fill it up with this thing. And it happens to me too. We have, 9 people now working on, since Lennon bowed out and moved on to his own thing a couple of weeks ago. But 10 employees, 9 employees currently, going back to 10 here. I'm working on hiring one other person to do some more stuff that Lennon was doing. And 10 employees. I mean, like, I remember when it was just me, and I'm like, if I just had like that one employee, like then we could really, okay, well, if we just had 2 people on my team, then I could really have the time. Well, what if I'm up to almost 10, I'm up to 9 right now, almost 10, right? And that thing is still there. It's like, okay, there's still more work to be done. There's still more things to do. And yes, we can continue to scale it and become more efficient and more predictable in how we create content, how we serve people, and in our processes internally and everything, by creating good systems. And even today, we've been bumping into some stuff internally with like, oh, this didn't happen because that system hadn't really been fully developed. Like now on our team, we are so dependent on these standard operating procedures, these checklists that we follow, that we started jumping into something without that written up first, and it's kind of creating some confusion and things. So, but at least we know what it is, right? We'll fix it here. But yeah, that just really hit me. I'm like, Tim, do the thing that you want to do now. Don't wait until the perfect time, and set the boundaries. Because if I really say like, no, I'm most passionate about spending more time with my family, then I should be spending more time with my family now. Because if I say the passion is what drives me, and the more time with my family, like I get it. Like, again, like you got to maybe do some of these other things in order to get the thing that you really want. But I think there's some truth to what she's saying too, is like, let's not like completely use the thing that we say we want as an excuse to like, it sounds noble, and it actually is just giving us permission to do what we actually want to do and enabling that thing instead. So yeah, it was good. It was good. That's kind of where my head's at. And I'm going back and forth a lot of this in my own mind. So Yeah. And if you want to, if you want to provide some feedback, some ideas, like I'd really love to hear from you. There's a link in the show notes of this episode or in the description if you're watching the video version of this on YouTube, where you can click a link and leave us a voice message. And we're looking forward to doing an upcoming episode where Delana and I are just going to respond to all your voicemail, whether it be questions, whether it be comments, be reactions. I'm really looking forward to that episode. It's gonna be good. So click that link down there and leave us your thoughts. And if you want to dive in, like you feel stuck on your channel and on your business, and you're that person who's like, I want to get to that 7 figures, 1 million in revenue, 1 million subscribers on YouTube. I'm struggling how to do that. I feel stuck. I feel like I don't know how to take the next step. That is our sweet spot. That is exactly what we do. That is our zone of genius, is taking people from 5 or 6 figures on YouTube in terms of subscribers and revenue and getting them to that 7-figure mark. We've done it many times. It's so fun. And we do have it all systematized in processes. It's guaranteed to generate the results for anyone who does the work. In fact, we tell our clients now that if you follow this process and at the end of it don't hit your goal, then we will work with you for free until you do. And it's just plain and simple, clear as that. And we haven't yet delivered on that, because either 1, they don't do what we say, or 2, they do it and they hit their goal, which is typically what happens. So if you would like to dive in and work with us, go to videocreators.com/consulting and schedule a 1-hour call with us. And we'd love to dive in with you and help you figure out next steps for your channel, give you everything you need to unlock growth in your YouTube channel and on your business, but then also to even work with you beyond that if you feel like that would be something you need. We don't jump to that because we find most people get everything they need in just a 1-hour consultation. Most people are like, oh my gosh, I had no idea I was going to get this much out of just 1 hour. Like, this is enough to set me up for the next 3 to 6 months. Thank you. And we're like, yeah, we know. That's why we don't just jump to the client thing. So we'll start with the 1 hour. If we need to go on beyond that, makes sense for you and your situation, we can talk about that at that point. But for right now, just give us an hour. We'd love to dive in and just help you with some next steps to take your channel and your business to the next level. So thank you guys for hanging out. Looking forward to hanging out with you again. I think Delana will be here for the next few episodes. We're still trying to figure out, like, how do we replace Lennon and what does that look like? You know, it's really cool and fun when there's the 3 of us hanging out, but we'll get it sorted out. Right now, me hanging out with you today and Delana hanging out with you in the next few episodes. And then we'll be back together again soon after that as well. But looking forward to seeing you guys again next week for another Video Creators Podcast episode. See you guys then.